Episode 101 of Three Things with JR starts now. I almost didn't do an episode this week because, well, I did 3 last week. And I thought maybe that's enough for a little while. But then Kiki and I went off to New York City for the weekend, and I found some things to talk about because we had a pretty great trip. So yeah, I'm back. I'm here. It's Monday night, July 25th. It's about 10:35. As soon as I'm done talking to you and uploading this podcast, I will be going back downstairs to sit on the couch and watch tonight's episode of Better Call Saul, which is probably the best show on TV right now. It's pretty awesome. That's the show I watch. Nobody else I know watches it with me or anything like that. I'm watching 2 other shows that are pretty awesome. Blackbird on Apple TV Plus. Highly recommended by my mother, and Kiki and I are 2 episodes deep into that and loving every minute of it. On Paramount Plus, The Offer, the show about how the movie The Godfather got made. Allison and I have been slowly getting through those episodes. We're 3 episodes in, and we've been telling Kiki about it, and she's really into it and wanted to get caught up so she could join us next time we watch an episode together. So I downloaded all 3 of the first episodes on the Paramount Plus app on my iPad, and she watched them on the train coming home from New York City. So she's all caught up, and that show is fantastic as well. So those are the 3 main shows I'm watching right now. The other thing I watched today and on the train and every minute I could find over the past week was the European Open. It's a disc golf. It's a major championship. It's a 4-round disc golf championship that takes place in Nokia, Finland. And wow, what a tournament. The 2 leaders of the tournament basically took the lead at the... got a bunch of hiccups going on. Sorry about that, everybody. Basically, Paul Macbeth and Eagle McMahon took the lead in the first round and never gave it back. They were something like 15 strokes ahead of third place and tied going into the last 2 holes of the last round of the tournament. They just both had a commanding lead over everybody and were battling it out one-on-one to see who would win. And I'm not going to spoil it for anybody that hasn't watched it yet. I would have been upset if somebody spoiled it for me. But some of the best disc golf you'll ever see, and a beautiful course, and pretty awesome. So it's by far for me the most exciting sport to watch on TV. In addition to being able to play it. It is very fun to watch it. So if you at all want to give it a try, let me know. I'll show you how to find the European Open. And it's hard to watch. You got to actually pay for it. So it's that. But there's plenty of other disc golf tournaments to watch if you want to get into watching disc golf. But you probably don't because you're not into disc golf. Maybe you'll get into it. Maybe you start playing and then realizing it's a lot of fun. And then maybe you start watching it, and then maybe you're addicted to all things disc golf, kind of like I am, and most of the disc golfers in the Charlottesville area are. It's so much fun. Anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I wanted to tell you, well, first off, the 3 episodes that made up episode 100 last week, 3 hour-plus long episodes, all dropped at the same time, and based on which episode got listened to the most, I'm going to take that as a review of the sound quality of the interviews. Bobby's interview didn't sound great because of an air conditioner in the room. I should have done something about that and recorded it elsewhere or something. Tony was driving while I was interviewing him, so that sound quality was mixed. Gary's sound quality was amazing, and that is the episode that got the most listens to. And I think it's not just because it's Gary, but it's also because that episode was the most listenable. It was totally listenable. So the message received. I will make sure these episodes and all of my shows sound good. That doesn't mean I'm going to go back to editing out burps and hiccups. Those are going to stay. So if that costs me listeners, I can deal with that. All right, New York City. We went back. It's the first time since the pandemic. We were there I think we were there in 2019. And this was the first time back. We boarded the train here in Charlottesville on Friday morning, and 6 to 7 hours later, we were in New York City. The train comes right into a brand new version of Penn Station, right? Like Penn Station used to be this glorious train station, very much like Grand Central, but it got torn down and replaced with Madison Square Gardens, but the train station was still underneath. And so right next to Madison Square Gardens was this big, huge, beautiful old government building. I think it was a post office, but that is now the Moynihan Train Hall. And so that is really, really cool. Kind of like a very modern type of, big, grand train station. Food courts around it and all that, big clock in the middle, but much more modern than something like Grand Central Station. So very nice experience getting on and off the train. Very nice indeed. And the train ride, of course, is it's a pretty low stress way to get to New York City. No tolls, no driving, no nothing. Just sit down and take a nap, read a book, watch a movie, get caught up on disc golf or The Offer or whatever it is you have loaded up on your iPad, get some work done, take another nap, and it's just a super nice way to get to New York City. So I highly recommend the train. Right out of Charlottesville, right straight to New York City. Still stop in D.C. for a little bit. They changed the engine on the train. So like one train goes all the way from Roanoke, Virginia to Boston. And in D.C., you stop for like half an hour so that they can switch the engine. South of D.C., they run a diesel locomotive. North of D.C., everything is electric. And so everything, they just changed the engine for what's pulling the train in D.C. And it's so you're sitting there for like 30 minutes, which is great because it's one of the few designated smoking stops on the trip. So yeah, not bad. Whew. All right, so we get to New York. We got about a 15-minute walk to our hotel right there in the theater district. And our hotel was literally a 5-minute walk to all 3 different Broadway theaters we had tickets to go to this trip. So very, very good location. And because of that, like this is the first trip I've ever made to New York City where I never once needed the subway or a taxi or an Uber or a pedicab or a bus or anything like that. Everywhere we wanted to go, we walked, including like a really nice 3-hour walk up to Central Park, all around the southern end of Central Park, all around the dairy and the fountain there. And I mean, there was music and performers and stuff going on. I mean, super busy. I love Central Park. It is the whole time I was there, I was just thinking this really is one of my happy places. I just love to be in Central Park. So we were for several hours, and it was awesome. On the way back, we walked right by the Plaza Hotel. Kiki's like, "Hey, can we go in there?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally. You can just walk right in the front door, walk around some of the large hallways and stuff down on the ground floor of the Plaza Hotel." So we did that. We walked in one door, walked around, walked out another door. And I reminded her basically, I said, I think that's the hallway that, Macaulay Culkin was talking to Donald Trump in Home Alone 2. And she's like, "Oh, yeah." And I was like, "Yeah, Donald Trump owns that." She's like, "Wait, what?" She didn't realize he owned that. She knows he owns multiple buildings, but she didn't realize that she was just in a building owned by that guy. And she was a little bummed. She's kind of grossed out, really, that we walked through that building, but it's still a pretty building, even though that jerk owns it. As soon as we got out of the train station, the smells of New York City just sort of took over our olfactory glands. And most of the smells of New York City, it's distinctive, Every now and then you'll get a whiff from a sewer that's not so great. But other than that, it's just New York City has a smell, and it's perfect. I love it. I don't know. I mean, it's all the people and buildings and cars, and it's probably horrible to breathe it in, especially when the temperatures are in the 90s and it's muggy and gross. But there's something about the smell, the air, the feeling, the aura of New York City that makes me happy. Also, there's pot everywhere. Like every time you walk out of whatever building, restaurant, hotel, theater that you were in, you will catch a whiff of the happy smoke. It's everywhere. They've pretty much made that like just no problem. In fact, you smell that more than you see or smell people smoking cigarettes. It's everywhere. Marijuana is everywhere. And if you like the smell like I do, that's not a bad thing. So another thing that's everywhere is COVID testing. There's these little pop-up tents on like every couple of blocks. You'll find COVID testing, and they say they're free, but what they mean is that they're covered by most insurances. So, I mean, anytime you want a COVID test, you can get one. It's not hard. They're everywhere. I literally saw like 20 or 30 of those in the blocks that we walked around, and never once did I see anybody actually getting a COVID test. What I saw was some sort of nurse-like person sitting there surfing the web on their phone and basically being hot and bored. So that's what's going on with the COVID testing. New York in general was more masky than, say, Charlottesville. In Charlottesville, I carry my mask around with me in my pants pocket everywhere I go, just in case I want to go in a place that requires a mask. And I can't remember the last time I had to put my mask on for just normal everyday activities. I think the last time I wore my mask with any kind of regularity was at the rehearsals for Something Rotten, and haven't needed it for rehearsals for Kinky Boots, haven't needed it for work or anything else. But in New York City, there are some restaurants that will require it. There are some restaurants that will require vaccine cards to prove you have been vaccinated. Some Broadway shows require masks. Some, it's optional. It's encouraged, but it's optional. And so we brought our masks and we wore them whenever it was mandated of us to do what we wanted to do, which really came down to one show. One show that we went to required us to wear a mask. And that's the first show we went to, and that's where we're going to start. So thing number one, Little Shop of Horrors. That's a quote. That's a line from Something Rotten, from my character, Nostradamus. But it's, of course, Little Shop of Horrors. And technically, this is an off-Broadway show. It's over between 9th and 10th Avenues, so just far enough from Broadway in a small theater that used to be a Baptist church. But it is every bit the production values of any of the big Broadway shows, just in a smaller, more intimate setting. I mean, we were sitting 5 feet. We were in 2 rows, one row back from the front row, and we were 5 feet from the stage and the actors, and it was awesome. The couple things I was looking forward to go see Little Shop of Horrors. One, the guy that plays Seymour is Rob McClure, who was he was the star of Something Rotten's national tour. He played Nick Bottom in Something Rotten. I watched his Broadway.com vlog. There was like 14 episodes where you got to basically see his travel blog from touring from city to city, performing Something Rotten, and that was amazing. I got to know Rob McClure quite well. And I've seen his version of Nick Bottom play in Something Rotten many times when preparing to be in that show. And I was super excited to see him perform. But when we got there, it turned out his understudy was playing Seymour in Little Shop of Horrors that night. So I was a little bit bummed about that. At least Christian Borle was there playing the dentist, and many, many other characters, actually. And he was probably the highlight and star of a fantastic show. Everybody in the show was great, but he was next level great. Christian Borle played Shakespeare in Something Rotten. He was in Falsettos. He played Willy Wonka in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory right before the pandemic. He is an accomplished. He is royalty in the world of Broadway, and for him to be in this little off-Broadway show, revival of Little Shop of Horrors, was fantastic. When I think of the dentist, I think of Steve Martin in the movie as the dentist, who, of course, was fantastic, because everything Steve Martin does has been great. But Christian Borle was next level good. And the best part of what he did, if you're not familiar with Little Shop of Horrors, spoiler alert, I'm about to spoil a big scene in that show, but the dentist dies because he's using a gas mask. He administers his own laughing gas to himself while he's being a dentist because it helps him enjoy the experience a little bit more. And in this case, the mask got stuck on his face, and Seymour is more than happy to let him die so he can feed him to the plant. When Christian Borle, as the dentist, dies, he did something I've never seen done in a Broadway show, like that level of show. And that is, these things are so highly produced that everybody's on the same page at every second of a show, right? The conductor of the orchestra, the band itself, every actor, all the crew backstage, the lighting people, the microphone people. I mean, everybody has to know exactly what's happening at every given second of a show so that the right lights are on, the right mics are on. Everybody knows where they need to be on stage, their cues, all of that stuff. So it's pretty rare that you get to see someone go a little off book. And Christian Borle, I think he was taking advantage of the fact that there was an understudy playing Seymour. I don't know if it was the understudy's first time ever doing it as, playing the lead role, or if he had filled in for Rob McClure multiple times. But regardless, he was a fantastic Seymour. Great as Seymour. Christian Borle as the dentist, when he needs to die, he lays down on the ground and he's dying. He's asphyxiating from all of the laughing gas and the mask that he's wearing. And he draws this death scene out for what felt like 5 full minutes. He's on the ground kind of writhing like he's dying, and you're expecting him to just collapse and go limp, as in dead, at any second. But instead of collapsing and going limp, he continues writhing around on the stage, making these horrible death gurgle noises in his mask, to the point of ridiculousness. Like he knows that if he does that, there's nothing anybody else in the show can do about it, right? Because he's the only one doing anything in the show. Seymour's on stage looking at him, waiting for a cue that he's not going to give for a long time, way longer than is, say, scripted. And to see him just milk that scene for every ounce of hilarity was just so satisfying. So much so, even the actor playing Seymour broke character and couldn't hide his laughter. He had to turn away from the audience because, like us, he couldn't stop laughing at how funny Christian Borle's death scene as the dentist was. And I love that Christian Borle did that and took full advantage of the power he had at that moment in the show to make it incredibly memorable and just lovely. So yeah, Little Shop of Horrors. I highly recommend it. Go see it before it's out, especially if you can get to one where before Christian Borle goes on to something even bigger and better on Broadway, because I'm sure he's destined to do something amazing. Whew. Our next show came Saturday at 2 o'clock, matinee, and it is actually the reason we went to New York. It was Kiki's birthday back in May, and before her birthday, I had been trying to figure out what show or concert I should get her tickets to for her birthday. And I was looking at different bands that were coming to the area. I was looking at different shows playing at Altria Theater in Richmond, and none of it felt right. And then on YouTube, I saw a Broadway.com interview with a guy named Ramin Karimloo. He is a male Broadway singer who has he's played Jean Valjean in Les Mis. He's played the Phantom in one of the Phantoms and several other things. He also travels around with his band playing music and just singing and putting on shows. and he calls it broadgrass. It's like Broadway music done in the style of bluegrass, and it's pretty fantastic. The guy is incredible. He's an Iranian-born, raised in Canada. He played hockey. He is ever so slightly dark skinned. It just looks like he has a perfect tan all the time. Square jaw, incredibly good looking guy who is athletically gifted, musically gifted, can act, can sing. I mean, he's just the full package. And there's no doubt that it shouldn't be a surprise that Kiki is absolutely in love with Ramin Karimloo, with good reason. And I found out that he was in this show, Funny Girl, a revival of Funny Girl made famous by Barbra Streisand from back in, I don't know, the 70s. And he's going to be in it. And so I knew right then that was what I wanted to get Kiki for her birthday. And then I was trying to do it all without her knowing, but leading up to her birthday, she saw it online that he was in it and sent me a text and said, "Hey, Ramin Karimloo's in this." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." She's like, "How do you know when you didn't tell me?" And then I was like, "Well, happy birthday." And so what I ended up getting her for her birthday was easily the most I've ever spent on anybody's present of any kind, which was a train tickets, a hotel, and 2 tickets to Funny Girl, front row. Literally, we were sitting directly behind the conductor of the orchestra. I could have flicked his ear if I wanted to. We were that close to the guy. And Ramin did not disappoint. At one point in the show, he even comes out wearing pajamas and a robe, and the robe is unbuttoned, and you can see his incredible physique. I mean, I was impressed. I know Kiki was. I know everybody in the theater was. The dude is just talented and incredibly sexy. So Ramin Karimloo knocked it out of the park. That show, the views were bad for this show. Which was a little weird. We had tickets already, but reviews are coming in as this show's not great. The sets are bad. Beanie Feldstein is not up to the job of playing this role made famous by Barbra Streisand. The book is not up to speed. It's not doing great. Now, the book was redone or modernized by Harvey Fierstein. And but people were saying, yeah, it's not written well. The book is the script. It's all the stuff that they say on stage that's not part of the songs. Those are the lyrics. The book is the script, the acting part. And the reviews were laying a lot of this at the feet of Beanie Feldstein. She is not your typical beauty, right? Like, she's not a Barbra Streisand. She's shorter and chubbier than Barbra Streisand, and I think that was factored in when they rewrote this or modernized it or updated the book for this show to factor in and make the jokes work for Beanie Feldstein specifically. And I for one, thought she was freaking amazing. She had some singing to do where she was belting it out like, oh my God, like I couldn't believe how much breath could be in a person to be able to belt out this blasting high note for so long. She did that multiple times throughout the show. She tap danced. She was so good at acting. She could convey so many thoughts and emotions with just simple facial expressions, a twitch of an eye, a move of her lip. I mean, just she was fantastic. And why she got any bad reviews, I do not know. I don't get it at all. I think Beanie Feldstein was, for me, the best part of the show. Ramin Karimloo, I get it, but Beanie Feldstein was amazing. So she does not deserve any of the criticisms that I have heard, but she was great. Also, Jane Lynch was in it. Jane Lynch is great. I loved her in Glee. I love her in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Jane Lynch is awesome, and she was also fantastic in this show. I mean, it was just a great show. The sets were cool. I did not understand any of the criticisms people were leveling against it. I highly recommend it, and go see it soon because Beanie Feldstein won't be in it much longer. I think she's got till the end of this month, which means the end of this week. And she'll be replaced, and then they'll be replaced, and then Leah Michele from Glee will be in it, and I cannot see how Leah Michele from Glee would be any better than Beanie Feldstein. And those of you that aren't into Broadway have probably stopped listening to this show by now, because that seems to be all I'm talking about. When it is, because that's been my life for the past couple of days, and it's become the thing I care about the most. So there you go. Normally I'd take a break between things 1 and 2. Thing 2 was Funny Girl, so we'll take a break now, and we'll be back in a minute with thing number 3.
Nothing I can say. Change your mind and stay. So I'll see you later today.
All right, we're back. Thing number 3, the third show we went to see. Company is the name of the show. It's a Stephen Sondheim written show. Now, since Stephen Sondheim died within the last year, I've learned a lot more about him than I ever knew before. Certainly, I've heard the name for years, had no idea what it meant, and now that I'm into this whole Broadway show thing, I now know what it means when people talk about Sondheim. I haven't seen most of his shows. He was a big part of writing West Side Story, so that's good. He wrote a show called Into the Woods, which is like a weird take on fairy tales and stuff. Kiki and I saw it in Charlottesville at the Paramount Theater. We almost left after the first act because it was just so weird and it really wasn't doing it for us. So that was it. That was all I had seen of Sondheim. And then he dies, and then I'm listening to different podcasts about him. I'm listening to songs written from shows that he wrote. And many of the Stephen Sondheim songs don't do anything for me. They're not catchy. Most of them are not catchy. Most of them, the singing is not super melodic. It's more emotional, and it's almost talking instead of singing a lot of the time. And I mean, it's kind of jazzy, right? And it sort of meanders around and takes a long time to get to a point, if it ever gets to a point. So the show Company, our Crozet Community Chorus was working on a Broadway medley before the pandemic, and one of the songs from Company was in it, and it was kind of a good song. So, and this revival has been winning awards and getting great reviews, and it's actually only going to be on Broadway for another week. I think it's over at the end of July, so we barely made it. I also had no idea, what is it about? Is it about a company? Like a place where people work? That kind of company? I assumed it had to do with that. But no, it has nothing to do with a company. It has to do with, having company over, like that version of the word company. Oh, company's coming, that sort of thing. That's the company they're referring to in the title. And the show is basically a commentary on relationships. Being married, not being married, being just friends, being gay and being married, being divorced but yet still friends. I mean, all sorts of different versions of relationships, intimate relationships. And it is hilarious. It is absolutely a comedy all the way through it. Every scene is funny. Even the serious scenes are funny. The music is great. I mean, the songs are fantastically orchestrated, and the performers were fantastic. The stage, the setting of everything was like no other Broadway show I've ever seen. Like simplistic and sort of abstract and awesome. Really, really well done. The orchestra was above the stage, above the actors. Like you could look way up into the top part of the theater, and that's where the orchestra was. I'd never seen that before. Like just everything about it was so well done. Patti LuPone was in it. I really don't know who Patti LuPone is. I'm sure I probably should by now know who that is and what she's famous for, but I don't. And I just know that she is famous, and it was a big deal that she was in this show and getting rave reviews. And boy, she has a song in the latter half of the show where she belts it out, and oh my God, it's great. The other thing she does in that scene is she lights up a cigarette on stage. And I don't know why. I mean, as a smoker, I still get excited to see that kind of stuff. Somebody's smoking where you're not really supposed to smoke. There's no smoking inside Broadway theaters unless it's part of the show. Then you can do it. And she did it. And it was part of the show to talk about it. And, you know, the discussion about smoking was basically that nobody smokes anymore. Which, as a smoker, I can tell you, it feels like that. Most people don't smoke anymore. Just a few of us idiots still around smoking. But she had a great line about it in defense of her smoking. And her defense was that smoking may be the only thing that separates us from the lower forms. I was thinking about that. Yeah, it's one of the few things that humans do that animals don't. So maybe she's right. That doesn't make it any healthier or smarter to do, but there's that. So, Stephen Sondheim, not everything he wrote was weird and annoying, but I can tell you The Company was fantastic, and I highly recommend it. So there you go. I think that's most of the stuff I wanted to tell you about. A big part of what I like about these Broadway shows is the technology that kind of goes into making them possible. You know, seeing how they make everything happen, how all the set changes work, and, you know, where people go on and off stage. How do they do those quick changes when they change costumes? There was some very quick costume changes that is mind-boggling to think how they did that. I do not know. But the orchestra is a big part of that, and it was handled differently at each show. At Little Shop of Horrors, the orchestra and the conductor were somewhere else. You couldn't see them. There was no room in the theater for an orchestra pit or an orchestra that you could see, but you could hear them. You could tell. You could hear them warming up their instruments and stuff before the show. So we knew they were around. And at the end of the show, they, normally when they would wave to the conductor and the band for the audience to applaud the orchestra. When they did that, they brought out a little TV set that looks vintage, and you could see the camera shot of the conductor conducting. So every musician can see the conductor, every actor can see him because there's TV screens in the theater where they can see the conductor give them a cue for when to start singing or when to do the next thing. And so that was a kind of a neat way to do it. At Funny Girl, the orchestra was under the stage, and the only part you could see from the audience was the conductor's head sticking out right there, front and center, downstage in the middle, and literally we were sitting front row directly behind the conductor's head. And so at the intermission, I was able to sort of stand up and look down into the pit and see all the musicians, and the musicians actually couldn't see the conductor's hands because of all of the stuff and just the way it was set up. They couldn't see what the conductor was doing live. They couldn't look directly at him. So the conductor was conducting to a camera right there in front of him. Every movement or cue that he needed to give, he was giving them to a camera that was then shown on TVs in the theater where the actors could see them, and every musician had a little monitor on their music stand so they could see exactly when they were given a musical cue. That was pretty cool. And then, as I mentioned, in Company, the orchestra was above the stage, so they couldn't see that conductor directly either. The band could, but the rest of the actors couldn't. And once again, they had TV screens showing the conductor so the actors could see him. Just little things like that, like how they make this stuff possible, how they deal with different sized theaters and different stages, and I'm in love with every single part of this thing. And I want to be involved, and I want to do it. And that's why I'm in Kinky Boots. That's why I did Something Rotten. That's why I did A Christmas Story, the musical. And it's why I'm going to keep doing this stuff, because it to me, it's like it putting everything together that I love about performing on stage. And there is a different job for everybody. There's so many people involved in making it all work. And when it all works, God, is it fun. God, is it good. All right, I'm just gushing about Broadway now. Kinky Boots. Tickets are on sale and selling out, so get over to shannonarts.org and get your tickets to Kinky Boots. We've got 2 weekends full of shows, middle 2 weekends of August, 12th, 13th, and 14th, and then again the following Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Get your tickets now because they won't be available much longer. And that show is really shaping up to be amazing. So I would love to see you there at Kinky Boots in Shannon Arts in Stanton, Virginia, coming up in just a few weeks. We are a few short weeks away from that. So, all right, that's it. Episode 101 done in the books. So we'll see you next week for episode 102 if I have time and if I feel like it. If not, we'll see you whenever I do. Thanks for listening. Love you all.
Everybody say